Good morning. I'm Heather Westerfield, Chair of the Commission on School Accreditation. This regularly scheduled meeting of the Commission on School Accreditation is being held today, Tuesday, September 18th, 2018, at 10 a.m. in the 4th floor boardroom, Central High School Building, 359 Northwest Street, Jackson, Mississippi. An audio recording is being made of this meeting, and minutes of this meeting will be recorded. At this time, we must determine if a quorum of the Commission is present. Quorum members, as I call your name, please state your location for the meeting. Heather Westerfield, 4th floor boardroom. Kelly Barfield.
Present, 4th floor boardroom.
Tom Brewer.
Present, 4th floor boardroom.
Kenny Bush. Sarah Foster. Roy Gill.
Present, 4th room boardroom.
Brian Harvey.
Present, 4th floor boardroom.
Dan Jones. Michael Lindsay.
Present, 4th floor boardroom.
Dr. Valencia Martin. Michael Miller.
Present, 4th floor boardroom.
John Mistelis.
4th floor boardroom.
E. Montgomery.
Present, 4th floor boardroom.
Eddie Prather.
Present, 4th floor boardroom.
Rob Tyner. A quorum of the Commission is present for the purpose of conducting this meeting. I call this meeting to order at 10:02 a.m. At this time, I would ask if Eddie Prather would lead us in the invocation.
But let us bow here. Our dear Heavenly Father, our dear Eternal Father, Lord, we just thank you for this day. Lord, we just thank you for your many, many blessings. Then, Lord, we just thank you for those that traveled, had safe travel. We pray, God, to be with them and they travel back to their various home or place of work. Father, we just pray that you bless this meeting, that it be conducted in the manner that you would be pleasing. Lord, thank you for the state, this country, this place in which we live. We forever give you the praise and the glory. In the Son Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
All right, item 2. Commission members, you have received a copy of the agenda. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda. Please identify yourself for the record.
Brian Harvey, so moved.
By Mr. Harvey. Second.
Second, Mike Miller.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. All right. Action 3, approval of the minutes of the June 7th, 2018 meeting of the Commission of School Accreditation. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes for the June 7th, 2018 meeting. By Mr. Brewer.
Eddie Prather, second.
By Mr. Prather. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 4, approval of the minutes of the June 14th, 2018 special called meeting of the Commission on School Accreditation. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval. Motion by Mr. Gill. Second by Ms. Barfield. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, approval of the minutes of the July 18th, 2018 special called meeting of the Commission on School Accreditation. I will entertain.
So moved, Sean Brewer. With one modification that I pointed out.
Honorary doctorate that we'll remove. Is there a second?
Second, Mike Lindsay.
Discussion? Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 6, approval of the minutes of the August 14th, 2018 special called meeting of the Commission on School Accreditation. Entertain a motion for approval.
Mike Miller, so moved.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 7, approval of the minutes of the August 22nd, 2018 special called meeting of the Commission on School Accreditation. I will entertain a motion for approval.
Brian Harvey, so moved. Mike Lindsay, second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carried. Very good. All right, item 8. Okay, that would be me. By the way, Dr. Vanderford sends her best. She's not feeling well today, so I will be presenting this item to you. Item 8 on the agenda for the Commission's approval is the annual district accreditation statuses for the 2018-19 school year. Along with the list of statuses are the districts with deficiencies in accordance with accreditation policies 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3 of the Mississippi Public School Accountability Standards. According to the policy, the Commission on School Accreditation determines the annual accreditation status of all public school districts in the fall of each school year based on verified accreditation data from the previous school year. The annual district accreditation status is based on compliance with the process standards and accreditation policies. In your binders for item 8, you will find the statuses for the Commission's approval for all 141 school districts. There are 113 districts with a status of accredited and 28 districts with a status of probation. Also included are your materials. In your materials are the deficiencies on record for those 28 districts on probation. As a reminder, when school districts are assigned a probation or a withdrawn accreditation status, these districts are required to submit a corrective action plan within 60 days of notification of their assigned status. The plan must stipulate what will be done to remove the deficiencies and the timeline required. The plan must be approved by the local school board as documented by official minutes and bear the signature of the school board chairperson as well as the school district superintendent. When the corrective action has been implemented to remove a citation, the district submits documentary evidence confirming such to the Office of Accreditation, and MDE staff may conduct follow-up visits as necessary to verify any corrective action or compliance. Do any members have any questions about any of your backup material?
One, if my counting was correct, we have 14 of the 28 school districts that will be assigned probation based on license proficiency only. I know that across the state that is an issue. Is there anything in the works? And I know that as a superintendent, it's very difficult to address this issue with the such shortage in the teaching profession. And I guess I know that we're all in the same boat, but when we're looking at 14 of the 28 schools, just because, not for lack of trying, they cannot find certified staff. And I wish I had an answer, but I would just like to call it to the attention that some of these school districts that they may not can get certified staff, and I don't know what the solution is, but I think that somehow needs to be addressed across the state some way.
I also advise the Licensure Commission, and this is routinely brought up in front of them. I know that the Office of Teaching and Leading, they also provided a presentation last month to the State Board of Education on what they're doing to work towards fixing this critical shortage that we're experiencing, different avenues, performance-based licensure, and they're really aggressively working towards that. The other thing that has been discussed, and Dr. Vanderford, I believe, mentioned it a couple meetings ago. We're looking towards revising the accountability standards, our policy, and one of the things that they will be considering is how right now probation is an all or nothing, and so the possibility of certain standards being permitted just looking at that kind of variation rather than having it an all or nothing.
Light or probation light, but yeah.
Right. So those are right things that MDE is looking at to bring forward to the commission.
Thank you, ma'am. Following up on what he did, not with the licensure, I see several financial issues, several in there with financial. Is it because they didn't get their annual audit completed in time, or there are some other? It's annual.
Timely submission. But unfortunately, a lot of times the districts will submit it late, and then they'll ask us to clear that standard. But the way the standard is written, you're late. You can't be unlate. So we can't clear it, but note that they're it's one of the standards in the back in the appendix. It talks about after 4 years, then there's a
It's not major financial finding that they're having trouble meeting obligations. It's just their audit.
their audit was late. Let's see.
That date is March.
What now? I think it's March 15th. Hold on. Standard 4 is the local school board obtains an annual financial audit of the school district as conducted under the guidelines of the Office of State Auditor no later than 9 months after the end of the district's fiscal year. So in some cases, they do it, they just do it late. But because it was late, it's an automatic.
If somebody were to ask, you have records showing they cleared the deficiency? Because you mentioned that they have to come up with a plan for addressing their deficiency.
I think it's repeated.
No, I was trying to find it to read it to them about the 4th consecutive year. All right, here we go. Appendix H. When 4 consecutive violations of the same process standard have been verified, then the Office of Internal Accountability will notify the Office of Accreditation. The deficiencies remain on record at the time annual accreditation statuses are assigned. The district's accreditation status will be downgraded, and the district will be required to develop a corrective action plan to address deficiencies. So they're not downgraded to probation until 4 years. So the first 3 years, we put it in our system as current pending. Is that what it's called? Current pending. So they're not recommended for probation just for one time. But we do still have to mark it in our records. Any other questions for Dr. Malone? Item 9. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the district accreditation statuses for 2018-2019. By Mr. Mistelis. And a second by Mr. Gill. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 10, we have a report of the internal review of preliminary accountability results in accordance with Accreditation Policy 3.1.3 of the Mississippi Public School Accountability Standards. Mr. Burrow, I believe this one's your item.
Yes. One should have a printout showing both the internal review committee summary of action and then one that says the internal review committee minute. I will go over the one that says.
Hold on just a second, Ms. Moore. Did someone just call in? Okay, thank you. Dr. Martin, we're on item 10, and we'll have to get someone to email you the backup materials. Thank you. Where did you say you were calling from, Dr. Martin? Greenwood. Thank you very much.
So I will review the summary page and refer to the detailed page, the minutes page. Try not to get too close to this mic, but It's because it's missing its windscreen, but I'll try to make sure it's picking me up. So on the summary page that we have, you've got a listing of the attendees of the Internal Review Committee. What we try to do is pull together representatives from various departments within the agency that can speak to all the various policies and functions across the agency. So you'll see a plethora of members from MDE that are members of the Internal Review Committee. The committee is supposed to be required to be composed of at least 4 internal members and 1 external. This year, the external member was Dr. Chris Domaleski from the Center of Assessment. Also in attendance was Dr. Paula Vanford and myself. We don't vote or try to sway the committee in particular on the issues, just present the information. So we had 34 districts that submitted a request for review of internal review of preliminary accountability results. So once we've submitted the preliminary accountability data files out to the districts, they have the opportunity to review the files and ask us to look at anything that they think may be incorrect or questionable in the results. 34 districts submitted such a request. These requests were reviewed initially based on the data files to see if there were any errors in the data files. We looked at specific student detail to determine whether or not there was an error. In most cases, there's not an error in the data file. It's just that the district maybe didn't fully understand the data as how it was reported in the file. And we're certainly going to continue to work to make sure that districts do know how to read these files moving forward. But we have been doing that for the past few years. Anything that can't be addressed specifically from the data files or the business rules that we have, we carry to the committee, and the committee review the request or the issue if there's multiple issues from multiple districts, and then they vote on whether or not to approve the request. So there were a total of 724 individual issues that were submitted. Some of them were FAE and demographics. FAE is full academic year, whether or not a student meets full academic year based on enrollment and withdrawal records. There were no changes made to full academic year data files, as they were not found to be incorrect based on current business rules and procedures. We did have about 13 demographic changes that we approved. This ranges from gender of the student, race, very, very basic data that is districts normally submit on a monthly basis. Of the issues that were reviewed by the Internal Review Committee, none of the issues were approved for changes to the so there were no changes following the meeting of the Internal Review Committee. And that concludes my report of the Internal Review Committee.
Item 11, District School Performance Reports and District School Performance Classifications for the school year 2017-2018. Mr. Burrow.
Okay, so I'm pretty pleased to report to you the 2018 accountability results. Everyone should have a listing of all schools and districts in 2 orders. So I believe the first order is by grade, and then there's a listing of schools and districts by alpha order.
Actually, I think we have it alphabetically first.
Okay, alphabetical first, then by grade. So accountability serves as a very important part of the vision and mission of the State Board of Education. This is how we ensure that our schools and districts are progressing in their performance and working towards improving the outcome of students. Our results and our work in accountability touch in all strategic plan goals of the State Board of Education. What I will do is point out to you the high achievers in districts and the low achievers in districts, and then do the same for schools and just discuss how we got to our results. So of the 149 districts, we had 18 that received an A this year. In the 149 count, there's 146 districts, 3 charter schools, Mississippi School for the Blind, the Mississippi School for the Deaf, and Corinth School District. So that's in case you're wondering about the change in the total number this year. Of the 650 700-point schools, we had 158 that received an A, and then of the 243 1,000-point schools, 24 received an A, so that would be that 10% based on the new baseline. In our low achievers, we had 23 of our 149 districts receive an F. 76 of the 650 700-point schools received an F, and 33 of the 243 1,000-point schools received an F. State summary. So basically, we take all of the data that feeds into the districts and schools, and we calculate it as one big school for the state, and we come up with our measures in each component for the state. And I'll just point out some significant changes. Of course, we know that the graduation rate for the state has continued to increase over the past several years. You'll note an increase there. Other significant note, you'll see an increase of more than 4 points in math proficiency. You'll see an increase in reading proficiency, science proficiency, and then a significant increase in acceleration, which we've also seen over the past couple of years as that component has been phased in. Of other note, you'll notice that there is some decrease in growth rates. Specifically, you may see math low 25 growth. That's a fairly significant decrease. Some of the decreases in growth can be attributable to, again, our inconsistencies in assessments and measuring growth. So last year we saw higher growth rates, where this year not necessarily as high, but not indicative of student performance. For the accountability indicators for districts, how we arrive at the results for districts. These have been pretty consistent. The only thing that has been phased in over the past few years has been the acceleration component, the participation and performance pieces. Percent weighting for those were phased in, and this was the last year of the phase in, so now they're equal at 50% each. Our top 10 performing school districts in the state. Enterprise School District is number 1, Petal School District, Ocean Springs, Oxford, Clinton, Biloxi, Boonville, Lamar, Union, and Long Beach. Bottom 10 performing districts: Jackson, Amite County, Noxubee County, Coahoma County, Jefferson County, North Oliver, Humphreys, Yazoo City, Clarksdale, and West Bolivar. Also of note is the charter schools are graded as both a district and a school, so you'll see these in the district file as well as the school file. The charter schools earn a grade as a school. We don't have any charter schools with grades 8 through 12, so their district, where they fall in the district file, is not necessarily indicative of their performance. Refer to the grade assigned at the school level, as they are 700-point schools. And then our official district grades, this is how they fall in the distribution. So you'll see the distribution for the previous years and then the distribution for 2018. We have 18, as we mentioned, 18 A's and 23 F's. Some things to point out, you'll see a gradual increase in the number of A's from 2016 to 2018. And then to note is there's a significant drop in F's in 2017, and then that comes back up this year. That can be explained because of the better of the two grades that were assigned last year based on the two baselines. We had a baseline that was established in 2016 and was reestablished in 2017. For districts, the cuts are not changing, so that we have the same cut in 18 as we did in 17. All right, we'll go through the same things for schools. This is the accountability indicators for 700-point schools. Nothing has changed in this in several years. In the high schools, it looks exactly like the district. The only thing that's changed from last year is those weightings and the acceleration component for participation and performance. Also of note, any school that does not have science, does not test science, doesn't have 5th or 8th grade, would be scaled out of 600 points, and then we equate the school onto the 700-point scale, because there's two scales in the business rules. One is for schools with 12th grade, and one is for schools without 12th grade. So our 600-point schools, as you might call them, are equated based on percentage of points earned onto the 700-point scale and assigned a grade there. So these are our top 10 700-point schools. We have Davis Magnet in Jackson, Pineville Elementary in Harrison, Bramlett Elementary in Oxford, Beach Elementary in Pascagoula-Gaucher, Enterprise School District, Della Davidson Elementary in Oxford, Clinton Park Elementary, Clinton, Bayou View in Gulfport, Power APAC in Jackson, and Northside Elementary in Clinton. And our bottom 7, I won't go through and name all of these in the interest of time, but just for your information. And I believe everybody, does everybody get a printout of this PowerPoint? Okay. Electronic version.
Yeah, and our numbers are a little different than what were on the screen for 2018 tab. Slightly off. It's showing 37 Cs, but that showed 38. We said 25. 23.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I think I understand. So there was a change that we applied. As I mentioned earlier, charter schools are recorded as both the district and the school. In this initial media file that you have, the charter schools were graded as a district, and so there were 2 charter schools that received Fs that should have had the same grade assignment as they had as a school. So one of them is a C, that's Reimagine Prep, and another one is a D, that's Smillo Charter School. So that's why you saw a difference in the PowerPoint presentation. And here are our top 10 1,000-point schools. Enterprise School District, as we saw in the top 10, the district level. And our bottom 10 1,000-point schools. Again, we have a distribution here for our school grade assignments, just like we saw for the district grade assignments. You'll see again a good increase in the number of A's over the past 3 years. And again, you'll see an uptick in the F's to that better of the 2 grade assignment last year. It is, yes. That's 700 and 1,000-point schools combined. And as everyone is well versed on, we established some new performance cuts for 1,000-point schools in 17-18 due to instability in growth calculations, but as a result of banked scores. And these are the new cuts for 1,000-point schools. So the other 2, you'll note, have not changed from last year. This would be the cuts for 1,000-point schools. Do you have any questions?
a question, and I just need some clarification. On that last slide, if we'll go back to 3 schools that had 0 on that, couple slides before that. Those 3 schools that have NA, official school grades.
Okay, yes, in 2017.
And this year we see some schools in here that and I will just it happens to be 2 schools that I'm familiar with, one in Pascagoula and one in Harrison County, the Child Development Center. They get 0 points all the way across. And I just need some clarification on how these schools are scored.
Okay, so what you're seeing in this table, the 3 NA schools, those were, just to give some background on this, those were schools that did not have test grades. They were not assigned grades last year. This year, well, there were a couple of things that happened. One, there was an Attorney General's opinion issued, and I can't remember exactly, Aaron, maybe all, that stated that all schools should receive a grade based on state law. I believe it was in reference to pre-K and K schools that were not receiving a grade, and their staff were not receiving performance pay. I can't remember exactly, I'm sorry. But there was an Attorney General opinion that stated that basically state law states that all schools should receive a grade. That was not happening in the accountability business rules as it was. There were exceptions for schools that did not have, that were pre-K and K only schools, or just kindergarten only schools. Those did not receive a grade. There were also some schools in the state that did not receive a grade. The 2 that you mentioned in Pascagoula, Goshen, and Harrison County, and then Mississippi School for the Deaf and Mississippi School for the Blind. Also, the Mississippi School for Math and Science doesn't receive a grade, and Mississippi School for the Arts does not receive a grade. The other thing that happened, other than the Attorney General's opinion, was ESSA came to be the law of the land, as we all know, and there are no exceptions, or exceptions are not allowed under ESSA for any subgroup of students, such as SED students. And we had several exceptions for SED students in our accountability rules, and I believe the school especially the school in Harrison County, has been around for a long time, if I recall, and has not received a grade. But in the effort to assign grades to all schools and comply with federal and state law, those schools were assigned a grade this year, as was the Mississippi School for the Blind and the Mississippi School for the Deaf. Mississippi School for the Math and Science, Mississippi School for the Art were not assigned letter grades, and there's already established business rules and policies in the accountability system that assign those students back to their home school and attribute their accountability measures back to their home school. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Part of it is that those schools are in their efforts to recruit students from local school districts. Local school districts don't want to incur a negative impact of sending off their best students to the Mississippi School for Math and Science and the Mississippi School for the Arts, certainly. But those are also in the business rules on how accountability works for those. The other ones we had to assign a grade to. And those other schools take statewide assessments, so the data is available to use. And so the data that is available is used to assign the letter grade for those schools. Although I believe the school in Harrison County did not have any proficiency scores or any proficiency performance, students that performed proficient, excuse me. So that was the reason why there were zeros in those components.
Correct, and just for those commission members that are not familiar with this school is, like I said, it's been around for probably 50 years. It is represented the entire county. Actually, it's in Mr. Lindsay's school district, but we're the governing agency. It's a standalone school that services exceptional children that the severe and profound. And as a commission member, and knowing that these two schools are fixing to get a grade of an F, with the students and the faculty that are there, I just have to voice the opinion that it's not equitable when we look at the students that are there to give them an F rated school because of the medically fragile students that are there and the care that they're taking. And I just have to commission that we have to look at how other alternate measures. I've reviewed other states and they have exceptions to these types of facilities, and I think it's a fair, unjust due to send out a school that is an F-rated school. And if you notice on the last page of 21 of your backup material that every component is a 0 because of the assessment that is given by the state. The alternate assessment map A does not measure anything that is measurable for these students' IEPs. And I just, I think it has to be addressed with the way that it's unfair and unjust to label a school an F school that is providing such a need for those students. And I say it could have been probably written in for the exception, and maybe that was an oversight, but now to plaster that across the news, and I just think it's unfair. That is correct. In other words, if that school is rated an F, is my child in danger at this school? And I just feel that to be published and to be put out there. You notice we tested 100% of our students. They said you have to test them with the alternate assessment. Okay, we did that. Of course, they did not come back proficient. And if that's the way we're going to have to do that, we're going to need some help with how that will be measured from going forward.
Staff are following, federal regulations following the IEP.
That is correct.
Providing the appropriate services of the IEP, which is the legal document that takes precedent, right?
Correct. And I guess looking for answers of how you're going to explain this because the general public's going to see that F school. And I understand there's some alternate ways to look at this, and I just wish we could come out before that's sent to the press on Friday.
No, I think your point is a good one. One of the things is that these schools did not know that they were going to receive a grade prior to the beginning of the academic school year, and so these schools' grades are going to be considered and reported unofficial. There should be some notations in the.
There's an asterisk by them, but I tried to figure out where it went. It did say unofficial, but when you put it out on the media and the newspaper prints it, how many people are going to see that asterisk, go back all those pages, and it took me a minute to find out what does this asterisk mean.
Well, and then also note that there are two schools that are impacted in the same manner that fall under the purview of the Mississippi Department of Education. So it's not, it's an issue that we share as well with our School for the Blind and School for the Deaf. You know, and there are different ways of approaching the issue that can be discussed and addressed over the coming year before we end up with official grades. And of course, looking for, is there alternative measures of performance that can be entertained for these schools and these students, or is it that the expectation is that they perform in the same manner as any and all SCD students? I don't know, you know, but it's something that definitely would need to be considered over the next year before we have results coming out again next year.
Right, and just you know, to spring this on a school district or any school or any facility that of this nature, I think is a little unfair and unjust, because what they're doing, the services that they're providing, like I said, they're following the IEP and everything, and I have to voice that concern, regardless, because, you know, if I challenge anyone to come look at this school and see what the great work's being done, and to be labeled them an F is totally unfair. It's not measurable with a letter grade of this nature. And even though that it's under the Harrison County umbrella, we serve all 5 districts, and it's a total school within itself. It has its own millage. It has its own everything. And I just need to voice that concern.
Past, we've given, in the past, we've given districts the benefit of the doubt when on the higher grade. I think it was last year that we did. There a possibility to do, since they weren't notified, to do a no grade this year, and then kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt. If they were measured, there would be an F. And between this year and next year, try to find a solution to what that looks like.
I think the point of indicating the grade is unofficial is the department's intent to, I guess, comply with federal and state law to assign a grade, but not necessarily hold the school in what am I trying to say? Negative impacts of having an F assigned to them in the current year, so that this can be, so that we do have time to work through the issue. That definitely is the intent of making it unofficial. Again, not for just the 2 that Mr. Gill references, but also the School for the Blind and the School for the Deaf.
Would it be more appropriate if we just indicated that that was an NA, not applicable, until we come up with some better standards? Because once you put that F tag on that school, whether it's Mississippi Blind, Mississippi School for the Deaf, or one of these other schools, once you label them that stigma is going to follow them, and then they're going to have to overcome that perception with the public and with the parents of the students that they serve. I
guess my personal thought on it, again, I certainly understand Mr. Gill's position, but it seems as though we have to provide a performance label based on the data that exists, and that's what we've done. Assigning an NA would essentially be doing the same as what we did last year, not assigning a grade.
And just for clarification, we have tested every year on the test that is required for special ed students with a significant cognitive disabilities with the MAP-A. Okay, 100% assessment. And those assessments do not measure what the IEP outlines for them to do. So we have an assessment that is assessing curriculum that is not applicable to students. So there also is an issue with that too, and I'm very well aware of it. It has to be addressed. But
recommendation wouldn't be to not follow the IEP. Surely no one would recommend
absolutely
that.
not. No, I'm going to do what's best for those students. and I charge each school to do that. But the issue that we're having is to label those schools an F. You know, AG's opinion on those kindergarten schools, and I noticed that they got the schools at the feeder pattern. Most of those that had 0 points, if you looked, I've already looked, they were C to B or C whatever school that they fed to. Okay, you know, I mean, you could live with, you know, that's the perception is everything when you're looking at measuring something that using that, and I just think it has to be addressed. And you know, when you publicize that is.
Let me.
Yes.
Following the law, the way it is, negative consequences on down the road.
Well, and I think that was the intent of making it unofficial, so that this would not be the first year of that counting down, if you will, to resolve a school that's an F for multiple years, and also to give the department time to review how we assign grades to these schools.
Let me say this. Brian Harvey, superintendent in Oxford, we recently, had we not closed our school for exceptional children, we would have an F here as well. It truly does not measure what those children need. But I think the problem goes back to, I believe it was Senate Bill 2395 that says the state accountability system has to be the same, has to agree with the federal accountability system, and therefore grade has to be. I think that's the sticking point here, is it is an unintended consequence, but if we're going to be compliant with state law, then these schools have to have a grade. And all of the other things that come with that part of it.
Well, and there's also been discussion about, how do you define the school? And it's up to the state to define what is a school. At the federal level, they don't say what defines a school. There's been discussion, from the K through K-12 task force that the commission formed about that same issue. How do we define a school? Is there accreditation rules that need to be looked at in that regard? Is this something that could be part of that? I don't know. I think, as you said, this is an attempt to comply with federal and state law based on the rules as they exist. And then the compromise is to make it unofficial in the first year so that maybe we can address it going forward into the next year.
For Oakley, you look like you have something you wanted to share.
Got some specific examples I'd love for you to share with Joanna Allen following the
K-12 attendance centers also, I don't know if that would be a route for this, and I know you're talking about a really small group right here, really, really small. But if there was some other way to measure them on the state accountability model, would that necessarily conflict with the federal model or not going forward? Does that make sense? They wouldn't be measured on the same standards that the other performances are because they're not taking the same standards.
The question I was fixing to ask is this something that the accountability task force has even addressed at all?
Haven't had the opportunity.
Not been while they're talking. Okay.
The new one, the new task force, or
well, I think she.
I mean, I was just curious. Yeah, any of them
past.
in the past.
Historically, it was. It was addressed.
It was, okay.
They were all excluded from accountability.
Oh, no, I don't mean like originally in 2013. I mean like recently, since the proposal to have to include them has the task force
No, we haven't looked at any alternative
made any recommendations or
formats
suggestions.
or any, school reconfigurations or definitions of schools or any of those. I think that's all relevant for discussion in the coming year.
And the question I have is, does it have, well, it's already pushed out to the media. Does those labels have to be pushed out to the media, but it's already out there?
I think so. I think it's part of federal regulation that we publicize the accountability ratings.
But I think it sounds like they need a custom model for those type schools, because their accreditation standards shouldn't be the same as our other schools. And that's what it sounds like. And so it sounds like we're going to have to come up with a different model for those schools that have primary or specialized needs, such as Mississippi School for the Blind, Mississippi School for the Deaf, and these other schools that we're talking about. It sounds like a special model is going to be developed just for their scoring purposes.
I think that's a possible. I mean, that's all possible. They typically call alternative performance measures for special schools, and that's something we have not discussed, but I think it could.
And the states have submitted those in their ESSA plans and were accepted.
Notes of all of your concerns.
Not looking forward, not looking backwards. It's not backwards, but just through the document, peruse through the document, and you notice that grade. And I'm not studied each one of them correctly, but just looking forward for a moment, there's not a single school that I saw there was a higher score with the EL than without. So currently how this is configured, every single school that has an EL component could predict they're going to be affected negatively by some significant amount of points. I mean, that's just in the data right here in these sheets, isn't it? Yeah. Unless you didn't have the end count. Every single one of them are negatively affected 8, 10, 12, 20, 25 points. That's sort of our starting point for this year.
There is not an opportunity to gain points from the EL component. It is like the other components. The only ones in which a district or school could actually gain additional points or bonus points, if you will, are growth measures, which are not limited to 100. But the EL does not function that way. There's no fractional, there's no bonus points or anything. So it's either you earn the same amount of points or there's a reduction based on.
Right. Or let me ask you this question. In doing this data, the numbers that stay the same, do you know if all of those or the vast majority of those are related to end counts not mattering, or in fact there were schools that crossed the threshold and they were not negatively affected based on the current way that this is proposed to be measured?
Yes, all the ones that have NA are not applicable in the EL progress column are ones that didn't meet the end. The ones that have 100%, you'll see 100 for EL progress. Those are schools that at least had sufficient progress in the EL component to earn 100% of the EL points.
Highest district number is like 93, maybe? Senatobia?
I don't think there's 100 in the districts. There's a few hundreds at the school level. The highest district that I'm seeing is 95.8.
idea just roughly what the average of that might be? Average drop, 20 points?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, I mean, I just asked that. Is there any, is that set in concrete on how that is going to be calculated? Is that up for any discussion, debate? Is that in front of any task force or committee? Or it is what it is, and that's what it's going to be?
No, I think that's a very good question, and I anticipate a lot of in-depth discussion over the coming year at the accountability task force level on the EL component and ways that we can, as long as we don't make substantial changes that would require us to submit a change to our ESSA plan, I think there are many adjustments that could be made.
Because then we're looking at also resetting cuts again. Possibly, because of the impact of that, if you look at it, would be significant currently. They would take the whole average down a good bit, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, I'll be
look at the numbers.
Yeah, I'll be consistent with what the superintendent said. That I won't say that there is not an opportunity for an adjustment. We have to look at the data, and certainly we would expect if there's not a significant change that there would not be a requirement to reestablish baselines.
Right, sure. But I mean, the numbers look like they are currently.
So we would need to first, discuss the issues that we've received many comments on. We've received many comments on the EL component from the field and from teachers, districts, and schools. We'll probably address all of those issues through the accountability task force over the next year, making adjustments that we feel that we can make and still be in compliance with what the federal government's requiring. We'll have to run data again and see what the results look like.
Ask, I do see a lot with the NA. The EL component was not one we had to choose, right? Weren't there other options for that in ESSA?
No, ESSA had a ESSA required the inclusion of progress in English language proficiency for English learners. So this component was specifically included.
Was a required component. We did in our plan development, working back and forth with Ed. The expectation was that it be a weighted component in the model. Our initial understanding was it would have a timeline by which we could include it as a point value in the model. Ed's perspective was no. For the results at the end of 17-18, for the 18-19 school year grade assignment, you have to include the EL progress proficiency component for the assignment of schools or identification of schools for school improvement. So that's the reason that we've got it in there with and without. We're using it with that component in the model as we're looking at identification of comprehensive, targeted, additional targeted support and improvement schools. And then we're assigning official grades for the state, which USDE doesn't really care about. The official grade assignment, we're using it without the EL component for this year only. It'll roll into the full model for official grades a year from now.
This is a part to admit, but I've not read the ESSA law. Is it really descriptive on exactly how that component has to look, or with the flexibility with it?
So there's flexibility in how that calculation is done. That's a state flexibility piece, but it is a requirement that it be in there. I've got some guidelines.
50 different ways that it's being done.
So some states are weighting it differently. Some states are weighting it more than we have, maybe, or they've included it as a separate calculation, but it's a value in the model.
Other discussion? Any other questions?
I need some clarification on the EL again, Mr. Burrow, on the EL progress. Just so I can make sure that I've got my head wrapped around that. For example, not to call out any school, but the second one, it has 91.4 on the district's alphabetical list. You're saying that 91.4% of the points were achieved.
The way we've reported EL progress in this file is to be consistent with the way that the other components work. So they're unweighted, and it's a percentage of the points for that component. So you would, in case of a district, in this case, you would take that 90. What was it?
91.4% times the 35.
50 points per district.
For the district, and
that tells you how many points the district earned for EL out of the 50. So that's the way we recorded that there. Like I say, to be consistent with the other components.
I just saw that and thought, looking forward, I mean, obviously that's going to be significant. You can just look at the numbers; it's obvious.
Questions? Concerns? Item 11. This time I'll entertain a motion for approval of the district school performance classifications for school year 2018-2019 based on school year 2017-2018 with the stipulation that the information continue to be embargoed to the public until September 20th, 2018.
so moved.
Sean Brewer.
Second, Brian Harvey.
I've always thought it was funny that we meet here and say they're embargoed, yet this is officially a public meeting. So obviously the scores are not embargoed because this is a public meeting. Nothing to you, Heather, but I just thought I just think that's insanity.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Item 13, an update from the K-12 Attendance Center Accountability Task Force.
Yes.
Dr. Malone?
I'm gonna let Alan weigh in if he wants to. We're going to let you know we have pulled together the K-12 Attendance Center Accountability Task Force that this group charged us with doing. In your backup materials under tab 13 is just a list of the members that are on that committee. They did meet several weeks ago and did nominate, I guess you could say, Superintendent Cantrell from Monroe County to be their chair. They are scheduled to meet again on October the 4th in the afternoon after this meeting adjourns. We do have 3 of our members from this committee that volunteered to serve on that committee. A representation not only of the task force, but we have an external member serving on that committee, and then we have representatives, of course, from 2 of the K-12 attendance centers. We also have some representation from the old accountability task force that are on there to help bring some perspective, historical perspective to that. That's really kind of where that committee is. They're just getting that ball rolling.
Yeah, and we also wanted the opportunity to present to them information from the 2018 accountability results. So they'll be public then when we meet October the 4th, and I can provide information on how these schools would look if they were 3 through 8 and 9 through 12 rather than being together. We can look at proficiency, performance trends for students in 3 through 8 versus 9, 12, and see if maybe reasons why the data reflected in the way it is for these schools, to see if there's actually we can tie down what the negative impact is on attendance centers. So we'll deep dive into the data that we have, and we'll be public then.
Comments on that item?
I don't remember.
We've had a meeting.
They've had one official meeting, and then they'll meet again on October the 4th. We had talked about trying to meet again this week because several members were already going to be in town, but there was the availability of the members that we felt like waiting until we could get everybody together. August 22nd.
Any other business?
Guys, is October the 4th. It will. Oh, there were actually a couple of items that we thought were going to be brought to you today, but we postponed until October because those program offices were not ready. So we are building that agenda.
All right. If there is no other business at this time, motion to adjourn.
And we do have lunch.
So moved.
Second by Mr. Fraser. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Adjourned at 11.